Hello, everyone. This is Rick, and welcome to Astral Club. This is an exciting one. This is Robert Monroe's Disaster Planet. Before I get into it, just want to mention Patreon. If you'd like to help support Astral Club and the work that we do here, you can do so on Patreon. When you join, you get advanced commercial-free episodes on Sunday, a library of downloaded episodes for your podcast app, and a Patreon email where we can talk back and forth. And if that's something of interest to you, you'll find a link in the description. Next up, private lessons. If you'd like a private lesson to learn how to astral project or perhaps increase your ability to project, we're more than glad to work with you. All you have to do is go into the description section, and there you'll find an email where you can send me a request for information on a astral projection class. Okay, let's get started. I'm a little bit nervous here because this is a big deal for me. This is something that I have wanted to experience and share for a very long time, ever since I was a teenager. When I read Bob Monroe's books, you all know they captivated me. Journeys Out of the Body, a modern classic of astral projection. But another of his books that I found very interesting, if much more advanced than Journeys Out of the Body, it is a book called Future Journeys, and he wrote about visiting a wide variety of other places and times, reliving a variety of experiences. It was very different from Journeys Out of the Body. You could tell he was going to more advanced levels and had connected with a power that existed, that it wasn't Earth-oriented, but it was a galactic type of power. And he established a relationship with it such that it helped him, this entity, intelligence, whatever you want to call it, collection of intelligences, I don't know. It helped him to travel to some of these places to grow as a being. One of them was called the Planet Zeer, or at least Zeer is how he wrote it. At least that was the name which helped to capture the ident. And remember, idents are essentially an address on the astral, and you have to match the vibratory level of that ident and then pursue it, but through your will, to get there. Now, he went to something very special, though. He went to something called Zer Surge. Apparently, this surge was some sort of a periodic natural disaster that occurred on this planet. And he arrived in time to check this out. Apparently, it was part natural disaster, part once-in-a-lifetime weird festival. And I was fascinated by, I'm fascinated by different planets and different civilizations, but I was fascinated by this one. And when he traveled there, he found himself right before this surge happened. He had been given some form of currency in the form of a card of some sort. However, the advanced entities, I guess, were on the cheap side and didn't give him a lot of money on the card, and he tried to find a place to, ride out this natural disaster, because he'd been given a body that could be perceived by these other entities, a body that essentially looked like it was one of their race. So he was definitely getting some help there. But then he encountered some problems with not having the right amount of money in order to find a shelter. And this particular culture, much like ours, was very money-oriented. And if you can't pay, you can't stay. No money, no honey. However you want to put it, That's the type of world that he entered, which seems to me not that much different from what we got right here and right now. But at any rate, I had tried over the years to get to this place. I would project, I would use that Zer Surge ident, and it felt like I was almost there, but then I got bam, I hit this wall. Like there was something fundamental preventing me from getting there. So the other night I decided, you know what, I'm going to ask my angel guide for some help. I mean, maybe he will help me if I could convince him that this is an educational trip. Like when you were in school and, you wanted to get out of school. You didn't care. Just get out. And if it was educational, oh, well, you put up with it. I remember we used to go see the Nutcracker Suite, which is a captivating ballet when you're an adult. When you're a elementary school student, the culture kind of goes over your head. So, I remember we cracked jokes and stuff, and I pity the poor performers because the whole theater was filled with fourth and fifth graders, and I can only imagine what that must have been like for everybody involved. At any rate, so I'm, extremely interested in this situation. So I left my body and I went to my angel guide. And I thought I'd have to give him a little bit of a sales job in order to get him to help me, because he often, encouraged self-reliance, which makes sense because I'm all about self-reliance to a large degree. So it makes sense that my angel guide would be of similar orientation. But I decided to share with him why I was there. And of course, he already knew. But he was patient and allowed me to explain it to him, which I thought was very nice. I said, listen, thanks for taking the time, all the rest of that. I'd like to visit this planet during this surge thing. And it's Planet Zeer, and it's Zer Surge, and it's the ident. And I've tried to get there on numerous occasions, and each time I run into some sort of invisible wall that just prevents me from getting there. And I was just wondering, if perhaps you could, help me out a little bit with this. He said, okay, it could be an interesting education for you, and who knows what else you might accomplish. I said, yeah, sure, definitely. So you can help me get there? He goes, yeah. I said, well, can you tell me why I couldn't get there? He says, yes. Zeer is primarily a service to self planet. Remember, there's two basic orientations in the universe: service to others and service to self. Service to others means that you devote a lot of your time trying to help others, knowing that in a greater sense, you're also helping your species and you're helping yourself out as well. On the other hand, there is service to self planets. That is a planet where you have people who are pretty much only concerned with helping themselves and taking advantage of others so that they can gain an advantage. I said, wow, that sounds a lot like the planet I'm from right now. He said, well, Earth is still undecided. There's still a lot of pushback back and forth between service to self and service to others. So we'll see what happens with Earth. But this planet is service to self. And they're a little bit more advanced than the Earth. I said, okay. I said, that sounds interesting. I said, okay, before you send me, can I just ask you another question? He goes, sure. In the universe, what is there more of? Service to self, service to others? He said, well, there's a lot more service to others than service to self. He said, in a greater sense, it's all the same, because whether you serve yourself, you're also kind of helping out others too, indirectly. Whereas service to others does the same thing and eventually you're serving yourself too. So it's two different ways to get at the same goal. The problem with service to self is that they have a higher percentage of self-destruction than service to other planets. Because service to self is so greedy and so interested and so self-absorbed that sometimes the planets, unfortunately, result to warfare with greater and greater efficiency until eventually they wipe themselves out. So service to self planets tend to self-destruct at a much higher degree, which is why there's a lot less of them. I said, well, I guess that makes sense. So, could you send me? And he said, yes, and you're going to have a body that they can see, and it will look to them like one of them. Although you will see yourself still as yourself, but they will see you as part of their own race. I said, okay, great. I said, before you send me, I remember Bob Monroe was sent there, and he was sent there with not enough money, currency, credits, whatever you want to call it. So I said, I'd appreciate it if you could kind of, juice me up a little bit so that I can spread it around a little bit and experience the planet and learn a little bit. And he just kind of looked at me and gave me that look. He goes, okay, yeah, sure. No problem. I'll make sure you're taken care of. I said, thanks a lot. So I got a little dizzy, blanked out. And when I regained my consciousness, I was on Planet Zeer, is all I can possibly imagine. And the planet was it looked somewhat like Bob Monroe explained it. The buildings looked modern, but they weren't more than 2 or 3 stories. There was no skyscrapers, and the buildings looked very. I don't know what it was made out of, but a lot of the buildings were made from some sort of a black, smooth stone. Perhaps it was some sort of granite or basalt, or maybe, I don't know, maybe it was some sort of a polished, metamorphic or volcanic type rock. I don't know, but it appeared very clean. There was silver accents everywhere. And there was a lot of people rushing around. Now, these people looked thinner than humans and taller. I would say that the people were anywhere from 5'8". They're about the size of my wife, I think. And then they went up to maybe around 7 feet. So you can convert that to whatever the metric is. I can't think of that offhand. But they were on average taller than humans. As I said, they were very thin, and their skin had a copperish tone to it. I couldn't quite place what type of being they were. They moved very effortlessly through the street, although their limbs appeared a little stiff to me. But for all the stiffness, they seemed to be very good at getting around pretty darn fast. They were walking at a speed that was probably double the speed that a human could typically comfortably walk. And I guess it was probably because their gait and their legs were longer than ours. I say legs because, well, I guess that's the best term I could have for it. Although on their feet, there weren't shoes. It appeared like a much rougher type hide than their skin, but they had, I guess, something that looked more like a cross between paws and a chicken leg. It was strange, but they moved very gracefully through the streets. And I started wondering about myself, trying to stay out of everyone's way. I started doing a casual scan. At first, it was a little difficult to tune in, but eventually I did. And the energy I got was, hurry, got to be in a hurry. The surge is coming. I got to get to my resting place, my sanctuary. Maybe that's the best term I could have for it. It was weird. There was this sense of excitement and tinged with a huge sense of fear, and just big hurry to get to the place of safety because the surge was coming. And I dug a little bit deeper, although I don't usually like to do that, but I found out that what the source of the surge was, and this is something Monroe himself never found out, that apparently there's a binary star system that this planet is involved with. But one of the stars is a neutron star, and it has a very elliptical type orbit. And once, I don't know, how do you put things in years when years are measured in Earth years? And I don't know what their system is. The idea I got was that this was a once in a lifetime type of event. And I don't know how long these people lived because any time frame didn't mean anything to me. I couldn't parse what it meant. But assuming they live at least as long as us, maybe longer, let's say it comes maybe once every 100 years. I don't know. At any rate, when it does happen, apparently this neutron star swings closer to Zeer and causes huge upheavals. It caused huge tides, and I mean mega tides. Tides unlike anything we here on Earth have seen, with extremely few exceptions. And that it also disturbed the Earth too. Apparently, their surface layers didn't involve a lot of heavy rock, but very light. It may have been volcanic rock. Anyway, it was pretty light. And they built on the surface of the planet, and a lot of the buildings were built cheaply because that's how you can make the most money. But the shelters were built with some sort of I guess I could use the term maybe huge, imagine huge building shock absorbers. Something that would allow a building, a sanctuary, to maintain its integrity because of this enormous shock absorber system. So that, the Earth can have a 9.9 or whatever earthquake, however they would measure it, I don't know. But these buildings would survive. And of course, once every, let's say, 100 years, I don't know. They had to rebuild a lot, but they kind of looked upon it as just, that's just the way things are. And they also looked upon it as a way that it would stimulate their economy. I got that much out of them. They had a very big interest in wealth, in accruing power. So as I was walking down the thoroughfare, I didn't see any cars or any planes, any motorcycles, any mode of transportation. But I did scan people who were coming up out of the ground, out of some sort of apparatus that it was weird. It was kind of, imagine a body-sized molded piece of plastic or ceramic, I don't know what it was, that someone could put their body into and then go up an escalator in it. And then when you get to the top, you just walk out, and then it goes back inside and I guess probably loops around again. So there was people coming out of these things, and the thought I got was that they had some sort of an underground subway system, shuttle system, I don't know. But it was hardened, but no one was allowed to be in them. So everybody was hurrying up out of these systems to get to, I imagine, their sanctuary. I stopped one of them and they looked at me. I could sense their irritation, but I shot them a clear telepathic message asking, where can I get a sanctuary? And they looked at me like I was slightly a bit of an idiot, but they pointed using their elbow for some reason. I guess that was an elbow. It was a joint, definitely. They had a couple different joints in their arms, though. It's kind of articulated, I guess. I don't know. Let's call it an elbow. I don't want to do a whole biology here on these creatures. So, yeah, he pointed at this one particular imposing building. It looked like it was extra solid. It looked like it was something that would survive the apocalypse. It was just squat and thick, and it just looked very, very strong. So I said, okay. And I said, thank you. But even before I got the thank you out, the individual was already headed away. And I got the basic ident that it was a female. So if you kind of get close and touch their mind, then you can get that it's a female versus a male. Because I don't want to say they all look the same to me, but I mean, they were obviously somewhere. I don't know who was taller and who was shorter. I do know the men were dressed in some sort of a wrap that was grayish and black, whereas I think the females, I'm just assuming, and I hope I'm not making a mistake, but I think the females were all clothed like the one I talked to in the same type of shift. I don't know what else to call it, but it's very body fitting, and it was multicolored, like the rainbow kind of thing. So, maybe it's my earth and prejudices, but it seemed like the females, at least based on the one that I talked to, were dressed in these multiple colors, and the males were dressed in the more dull gray, black colors. So anyway, enough with the fashion. I started going to the particular sanctuary when I ran into a smaller being. This one was smaller than the adult female that I saw. And I got the ident that it was immature, and that it was essentially, I just scanned the mind real briefly, what I would say would be a rough equivalent of a middle schooler in Earth years. And a middle schooler here in the United States is somebody who's usually in 6th, 7th, or 8th grade. So you've got someone who is definitely not a mature being. Anyway, this being was crying, and I sensed it was female when I touched the mind. And when I touched her mind, she looked up at me, and she didn't have tears in her eyes, but I could sense her fear and her despair. And I said, "What's wrong, little one?" And she looked up at me and was puzzled, unsure as to why I was talking with her. So I just said again, "What's wrong? What do you need?" And she looked up at me again, once again, very curiously, not understanding why I was talking with her. And she just said, "I was robbed and my credits were taken, and I don't have anything to pay for my sanctuary. So I'm going to have to leave this body shortly." And I looked at her shocked, and she was sad, certainly, but she seemed to accept her fate. And I said, "Well, no, come with me. You can share my space." So she looked at me once again, strangely, but then she smiled and took my arm, which felt weird all of a sudden because it felt like I had an articulated arm myself, even though when I looked at my arm, it looked like my regular arm. It was a very curious sensation. So she led me into the sanctuary, and I went up to. I was looking around, but she seemed to know where she was going. She took me over to a side wall, and in there was an area where, and she said that we need a room for sanctuary. The board clerk didn't even look up, just reached out his hand, and I handed it over to him. He scanned it with something cupped in his hand, but it was so quick, I didn't even get a chance to look at it. And then he handed my card back to me. When he, I guess he looked at something and saw something. Maybe he saw how much money was on it. All of a sudden, he wasn't bored anymore, and he looked up at me. And then he looked over at my companion, and I sensed something weird in his thoughts, but I couldn't place it. It didn't make sense to me. I couldn't understand. At any rate, that thought then just left, and he said, "Allow me to show you over to your space, and it's a very luxurious one." So he took me over, and he said, "Okay, let's see here, Rick. Is that your name? That's a very odd name." Well, I said, I come from far away. He goes, "Oh, okay. You came from the Western continent?" I said, yeah, yeah. "Oh, okay, that makes sense. I guess you guys have different customs than we do. So enjoy your stay with your female companion." And I was feeling generous, so I said, "Here, please, you've been excellent here. Please give yourself a tip." And he was very happy, scanned it again, said, "Thank you very much. Enjoy your stay and enjoy the festival." I guess that's what they're calling the Surge, a festival. I think that's the term he used. So this door opened up and we went in. It was a fairly simple room. There were mats on the floor. It looked very Japanese from that standpoint. And then the door closed with a suction type sound. I could then hear vents open and air was being pumped in. The female pulled her mat over because there was two of them in there and sat next to me, which okay, I guess that's okay. I didn't think anything of it. But then she started touching my arm again. And I didn't understand why, because she was leading me before, but now we're in this place. And that's when her mind reached out to me and said, "I was surprised that you found me attractive since I'm not yet in my fertile cycle." At that, I just recoiled and I pulled away from her and I said, "Whoa." And then I realized that "whoa" doesn't translate telepathically. I said, I think you're confused. I'm not interested in you in that way." I was fumbling because I didn't know what to say. This was odd. I didn't want to offend anybody because I don't know what their culture is, and I don't want to assume. And who knows? Maybe I thought something wrong. I was pretty sure based on the telepathy that I was getting, but who knows? Different cultures, and so maybe I was confused. But she said, "No, it's all right. It's all right. You're paying for my sanctuary. I will meld with you." And I said, "No, that's not necessary at all. It's fine. It's fine." Then she looked at me and she pulled back a little bit and said, "I don't understand. Why did you help me then?" I said, "I helped you because you were going to die if I didn't." And then she looked at me once again, strangely, like not understanding, still not understanding why. Basically, she went back like, "Why are you concerned? Why do you care about my well-being if you don't wish to meld with me?" Or worse than that, she used the word "use," which was even more repellent. Or at least that's what translated in my head. Either way, I was starting to feel a little nauseous. And I was glad that I wasn't in a physical body. I said, "Listen, I'm just here. I'm here for the festival. I'm here for the sanctuary. I'm from far away. We don't do that where I come from." And she said, "You don't mate?" I said, "No, no, yes, but no, not with not with young females before they're fertile. Oh, and she kind of looked at me strangely again, but the whole idea that I was foreign kind of made her feel a little bit better because, oh, I guess I must be a little odd because my customs are different. And I said, look, I just wanted to help you because you needed help. That's all. That's all. And she thought about that because it was an alien concept to her. And at that, she actually gave me another little hug, this time without the weird radiation of, sexuality. And I felt good. I felt like, okay, maybe, I was thinking about, I'm watching what's going on here. I'm trying to learn from this world, but maybe I've helped her a little bit. Maybe I've inspired her to change her orientation, to understand what it's like to serve others without expectation of something in return. Who knows? Perhaps she'll go on and change this planet. Who knows? At any rate, we stayed there, and then there was this enormous noise, like the sky was splitting open. Everything started to rumble. The room itself began to shake back and forth violently at first, but then I heard some sort of machine kick in because it was very loud, and it seemed to stabilize the room so that whatever shaking was going on, it was causing some sort of a counter pulse such that it was keeping the room, it quieted it down and it got it to a point where there was just a vibration going on, one that was slightly uncomfortable, but not major league uncomfortable. We stayed there for, I'm not sure how long, but when it was over, the room unsealed itself, and she and I went outside. And I asked her, what's her name? And the best English version I could get is Zythera. So that was my friend that I made on Planet Zeer for the Surge. When we went outside, she was still holding my arm, and we looked around, and there was destruction everywhere. A lot of buildings had fallen down. Our building was perfectly fine, but there was a lot of destruction, a lot of folks running around. I imagine emergency services were already kicking in. There was sirens going off and people coming out of their shelters. And so I imagine they had themselves a big cleanup ahead of them in preparation for the next Surge Festival to come in who knows how many more generations. Well, that was my experience because I soon returned to my body after that. And I said goodbye to her and she smiled, Zythera. And then I found myself back with my angel. I thanked him for his assistance because I could not have made this visitation without his assistance. And then I returned to my body and I wrote down a bunch of scrawled notes as per usual. And I got a chance to share it with you, and I hope you'll forgive this long episode. Well, if you like this, please hit the like button. Share it with those of like minds. Subscribe if you haven't already. And I need your questions and your comments. I mean, what do you think about my visitation? Would you have done anything differently? What did you think about that service to self planet? What would it be like to live there? Who knows? It was a pretty interesting visitation. But please share your thoughts with me. And as always, this is Rick, and I will see you on the astral plane.